everybody. Thank you for joining us today on a nice Thursday afternoon and evening, no matter where you are. We're going to give everyone about 60 seconds to get in and get ready. And we've got an amazing guest with us today, Cassie, who we're super grateful she would spend the next hour with us, sharing a lot of her experiences and how she feels we can do things better and different in dentistry. But we'll give everybody the next 60 seconds, and then we'll get ready to rock and roll from there. But thank you for being with us. Everyone, just want to give a big welcome and a thank you to all of you for being with us this evening. We're really excited to share some more insights about how we think dentistry has changed and we all need to evolve how we operate. The world thrives on change. And over the last 100 years, clinically, dentistry has evolved. And I would say over the last few years and over the last 20 years, the business operations of practices have also evolved significantly. But often we believe that if we continue to do the same thing and maybe just work a little harder, we can get similar or better results. I believe post-COVID, with the inflation and changes in labor that we've seen, we have to play the game different. And today, what we want to spend some time talking about is, are we optimizing for things within our practice? Are we working really, really hard that should not even exist? And we're really grateful to our co-sponsor Curve tonight for making this happen. They have some amazing technology that is allowing dentists to be efficient and reduce stress on their staff while still giving a really good patient experience. And tonight we're going to talk about efficiency, and not by just adding. And in our world, we often think about what's new that we can add. And Elon Musk is the quote behind the original title. And what he often pushes on is, we invent and build systems, and then how do we strip out 80% of it? And I think it's a really good question that we are often stacking or not changing in dentistry. And can we rethink the model, have less burned out teams, more profitable practices, and deliver really good patient care? And just want to briefly introduce myself before I turn it over to Cassie. And my name is Cory Pinegar. I'm our founder and CEO here at Reach. Really passionate about dentistry. I was an early employee at Weave, and I deeply believe that there's a lot of room for innovation. And as an entrepreneur, that gets me excited. And I believe there's a lot of things that we need to strip out of dentistry to do better. And at the same time, there's a lot of things that we need to make more efficient. And really excited to now introduce the star of our show, Cassie, who has cut her teeth in dentistry for many years and even grew up in a house that was consistently around dentistry. So Cassie, with no further ado, thank you for being here, and would love to have you introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm so excited to be with you. My work that I do is in the trenches with practices day in and day out. Over 24 years of both dental and hospitality experience, where really my goal is to take both the marketing side and the operational side and just raise practices to a new level. A lot of the work that I've done that you'll hear tonight is, comes from me being in those trenches when practices are close to acquisition. So fast changes in order to make them the most profitable. But there are also things that I believe we can do right now to make practices profitable for the long run. And really, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting
I love that.
results. And it's where we are today. And I'm seeing it in dental time and time again, where we think we're just moving the needle by, hiring the same types of employees. So tonight, I can't wait to share that. AI implementation has become a big piece of what I do when I go into clinics. But really, I'm hired at the point that there's either a dumpster fire in the clinic, or the clinic is looking to scale and grow and potentially sell down the road. So I look forward to sharing some things that I think will make you far more profitable.
Awesome. Thank you, Cassie.
Sure.
Would love to, as we get started here, would love to push out a poll that we have. And a question for all of you is, what is the most frustrating part of managing your front office right now? And so you all should be able to go in there. But Cassie, I mean, you are doing this day in and day out. What do you feel and see is currently causing a lot of wear and tear on practitioners and front desk teams?
Yeah, I think that, since the days of COVID, we attempted to combine roles and responsibilities. So someone sitting at the front desk is managing many things while still trying to manage the patient checking in. And we're missing the customer service in the midst of that. So because of that, the burnout is real, and we're seeing a transition or a changing of the guard, as I say, from the A+ employees to the D- employees that have no dental knowledge or experience. So now we're trying to train, we're trying to answer phones. And so I think really it's, both retention of teams and patients. And how do we make that D- employee elevate with automation and adequate information, for sure.
When did you feel that the guard really started to shift? Was it during COVID? Has it been after? Was it before?
No, I think it was in the 2 to 3 years following COVID. I mean, people coasted for a bit because they were getting a nice paycheck from the government while still working just a little bit. And so everything was smooth for just a little while. And then what we saw is this giant amount of, influx of patients trying to schedule and coming back into the clinic. And we didn't have the same level of response. And so those that had been doing it for years, after sitting at home for a while, were like, I'm out. It was far more peaceful when I was at home. And they've taken on less stressful jobs, because let's be real, dentistry is, in my opinion, one of the most stressful industries that you can possibly be in. And so that's been a very big piece of it for me. And I think that it really just 2 to 3 years after COVID hit is when it began. And I really feel that in the last year and a half, we have seen a mass exodus that is leading us to that far less trained employee, which is making for some very hard transitions.
Awesome. And looking at some of our poll data right now, there's kind of two big frustrations that people are honing in on, and it's the recruiting and training of new staff, and it's dealing with insurance and insurance verifications, eligibility checks. What's so interesting is everything that we have on here from an answer has nothing to do with in-person patient interactions.
That's
You
right.
just nailed it. Like, we have stacked so much into the front that people are absorbed, and none of these are generally even in the main reasons people get hired. But
Yeah,
then we all know we can call Delta Dental, and to verify one patient, we could be on hold for 32 minutes before we talk to somebody.
that's right. Yeah,
There's some interesting data, and I've been in, owning my own business within dentistry for the last 8 years. And as you said, like, the guard has changed, and there's some interesting data that we wanted to bring to the call today. First and foremost, about a third of front desk staff is turning over every single year. And dentistry, though from the outside observer looks very simple, it takes a long time to learn. And so if every 3 years you're flipping through the people who know how to schedule best and the quirks for mastering Delta Dental, it just feels like you're already starting new. And that's why there's so much frustration on the recruiting and training of new staff. And then there's some really interesting data that during COVID, there was a term commonly phrased as the Great Resignation. And it's where employee loyalty and turnover really took a big spike. And even if you have people working with you, according to Forbes, only 30 to 32% of US employees are engaged in the work you're doing.
That's right.
And instead of being a team where you're carrying each other up the hill together, there's a large percentage of our teams that we're having to pull and carry up that hill. And it's taxing. And it what makes the burnout that we are all sensing within dentistry very real.
Very real.
Next, I want to talk about kind of the excellence gap. And it's what we alluded to a second ago. I think about the front desk in dentistry and how we are answering inbound phone calls. We're making recare calls. We're calling unscheduled treatment. We're sending text messages. We're verifying insurance. We're checking patients in and out. We're taking payments. And that's just a few.
Right.
And then there's what patients are getting from us. And because we're so busy checking the box and following systems, patients are often getting left behind. And we've all walked into a medical practice where there's a super kind person at the front and they are on the phone right when you call, right when you step in, and they go, yeah, give me 1 second and I'll be with you. And it ends up being 5 or 10 minutes and it diminishes that experience. But
Agreed.
Cass, my question for you is like, what are you seeing in terms of what teams are doing and what patients are now experiencing in dentistry?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the first thing that I ask a team to do is to take a look at how they have evolved as a consumer in the last 5 years. We all have chosen Instacart for orders from time to time. We now, do DoorDash or Uber Eats. We are less patient when it comes to something that isn't what it should be. And in fact, if it doesn't work out when we're there as a consumer the first time, what happens? We never come back, right? Because we become fickle about how things need to run efficiently. So as a consumer, you've changed, but as a dental practice, we have not. And so what I say is dentistry is the one industry where everything is run with the measurables internal that serve as the guide for how the practice operates. Well, that doesn't work anymore because the consumer, the patient demands more. So it's nice that you want to close your doors at noon, but you should be alternating your schedule because that's when people have a lunch break. And we forgot the fact that the patients are coming into the practice when they're taking PTO to see you, when you could be changing your office hours to accommodate them. We forget that time is money, and the longer they sit in the lobby filling out a paper form, the longer it takes to get them to the back of the office. And I always say that if you want to take a hard look at what really matters, your Google reviews are reflective of administrative tasks. Rarely, if ever, will you see a Google review that will say, I hate the quality of the filling that the dentist put in my mouth, because the clinical aspect is not what they're hyper focused on. So if we can fix the administrative elements, the dentistry part becomes relatively simple because now we're getting back to what? Standard of care. So what I see happening right now in that excellence gap is I just see the customer and the consumer being left behind, the patient being forgotten in the process. And I really ask, teams to sit back for a moment and take a hard look at this, because what's happening with the teams is because they're managing all of these tasks, they're putting patients on hold that are the revenue generators while they're managing the non-revenue generating calls, the non-revenue generating engagements. I share this story all the time about the team member that I sat listening to the best deals on cotton swabs for the week with a Henry Schein rep on the phone as the new patient is checking in and they're putting up the one finger like, just a moment. And I'm like, I'm here to tell you, like, your deal on cotton swabs compared to the new patient that's going to have a lifelong relationship with you, not even in the same universe. And we've missed that. And so, when we talk about control the controllables, this is really where it goes a lot further than just saying, okay, let's automate a form. This is about analyzing all the aspects of the practice so that the patient experience feels so smooth that it transfers the trust to the quality of care they're getting ready to get in the chair. Because if you're fumbling at the desk, they sit down in the chair and go, I don't know if this is going to be that great of a practice, no matter how great the dentist is. And so I really see this all the time where that excellence gap is, a kind of a cookie cutter scenario at the desk where all of the tasks are being heaped into one zone And really it's creating a terrible experience for patients.
You have the opportunity, I know, to go in and help with implementation of AI and other systems and have worked as an operational consultant. There's a gap, but there's practices who do innovation and change really poorly and are doing things the way they were. Some practices are still on paper charts. And then there's some who are really taking that innovative and simplistic leap forward.
And some are doing, not to interrupt you, but some are doing paper or having, the paper chart still in the practice, but implementing AI for their phones. And I'm like, wait, time out. Did you just add another voicemail, or have you fixed something that created a better system for your team? So again, there's an example of optimization that the team actually said, we implemented AI for $2.99 a month to answer the phones, and it just went into a new voicemail. So like all we did was set up a new voicemail so that we're still not answering the phones, but we have a voicemail for that.
When you take that step back and look at, people who are innovating and changing with how the world has adapted, just as you said, consumers want things here and now, and there's high expectations. What are the differences in terms of performance, in terms of the practices who don't innovate and change or doing things from 20 years ago and people who have really taken the changes in stride? Walk me through what you're seeing if you were to compare the apples to oranges.
Yeah, I think the very first thing that we want to take a look at when I'm going into a clinic is the money, right? The currency that's flowing through the clinic. And that is where I'm seeing the biggest change happen and I see it on the poll here that, dealing with insurance and payer calls is a huge piece of this, because what happened was we lost the dental IQ that knew the CDT codes, knew why things were rejected, knew how to change the narrative. Next time we have a MetLife patient, we need to do 7 vertical bite wings and a pano because that's all they accept for a comp exam. We had teams that had all that knowledge. So they knew how to work the system effectively and efficiently to increase the cash flow, to get paid. And now we don't have the knowledge that exists there. So what we see happening is that very basic employee that doesn't have the dental knowledge managing the money coming into the practice. And so immediately I stop things and go, okay, wait a second. Before, you took for granted that somebody was checking the CDT codes and checking out the patient and ensuring accuracy of the visit. So the first thing you should do with optimization is be looking at that PPV, that production per visit. What does it look like year over year for the last 3 years? And has it continued to diminish? And most will say, yes, it has. I'm working harder, but getting paid less. And that's where I challenge them to say, okay, let's look at what isn't getting paid out, what you're adjusting off, and what's missing in your CDT code structure. Because I have doctors all the time that'll tell me, oh, I don't even submit for that because we don't get paid for that. And I'll go, oh, but no, that's actually happening now. But it's because you don't have Sally that was here for 30 years that actually checked and put the right CDT code in to make sure that you got paid for that. And so we're operating under the assumptions and trusting that, insurance is paying at the lowest amount it ever has. And I'm saying it's time to stop and trust, but verify that maybe that's not what's happening. And maybe we need to fix the way we're doing things from the very beginning. So optimization for me, even right down to scheduling, looks like proper CDT code usage and a strong analysis of what is not being paid or adjusted off. And once that's done, online scheduling becomes a breeze, because now your production is equated to the right type of visit. You know exactly what is going to be accomplished. And I always say the CDT code structure is your checklist. It's not just what posts to the ledger or your invoice. It is your checklist for excellence in the visit. And so, really that's what I'm seeing trend, is that we've negated the money first and we've moved on to all these other ancillary things. And I'm like, nope, let's fix the way the money is coming in and the way we're collecting, because once that's done, now we can focus on all these other things.
Interesting. And in preparation for this webinar, this is one of my favorite quotes. Are we optimizing for something that should not exist? And I think the ultimate sign of a great business is simplicity, because strategy, there's a famous quote from the founder of Southwest, strategy is choosing what not to do.
That's right.
And in America, and probably even within the world, we, over the last 50 plus years of consumerism, have developed habits of what I call stacking.
Yes.
And it's, well, I go get the new Lululemon polo so that I feel really good when I'm golfing. And we don't get rid of what we had prior.
That's right.
And so in our business, we're like, okay, there's new technology. And instead of figuring what can be reduced, we're just packing rubble on rubble on rubble. And because of it, the system doesn't operate incredibly effective. You said
Yep.
something amazing when we got started. We as consumers are different today.
That's right.
We want different things. Back in the day, when someone called your Google listing, they'd leave a voicemail. Today, if they call and you don't pick up, there's a 14% chance they're going to leave a voicemail. We
That's
are
right.
different. And so I'd encourage all of you, instead of just saying, how am I adding? How can I build my practice to truly what I want as a consumer and what I know my patients want today? Strip it all back, nuke everything that you have, and begin to build the practice that you know solves the pain of today. And I
That's right.
think that's where we can optimize in a more simplistic fashion. Cassie, kind of walk us through what you're seeing as a day in the front desk and where you feel things and practices right now are really falling apart.
Yeah, I want to back up to your comment about the Lululemon purchase without getting rid of the other shirts that you don't want. I think this is why I like operations so much, because as a child, my grandma was with me all the time and she would never let me get a new piece of clothing until I got rid of 4 things that I didn't use. So we would actually go and give away 4 items out of the closet in order to go get something new. So all of that to say to you, that's how I operate in dental to this day, to say, okay, before something new comes in, is there anything operationally that doesn't need to be here that you are spending money on that, like for instance, I had a team that was spending a significant amount of money on just a system that showed them phone analytics. And they were like, oh, this is the best tool we've ever had. It shows exactly how many calls are dropped and all this information. And I walked into the clinic and number one, they weren't answering the phones. And number two, when I pulled up the user information, no one had logged in the last 90 days. And I was like, that's great that you think that this is doing something. However, it is your band-aid to something that actually needs to be sutured. And I'm a big proponent of that. So are you band-aiding the situation for a slow bleed that's going to continue? Or are you suturing it once and for all and saying, I don't want this to happen anymore? And so what I see happening in clinics today is really this cause effect with the dentist. You either have a dentist that is largely not involved in leadership because they just don't want to be, or you have a dentist that's very involved in leadership, but many times trying to create workarounds, not in a negative way, but truly trying to make impact. And I'll give you an example of something that just happened to me the other day, but the doctor came up and they couldn't access information on the patient in a way that they felt like was protected from the mom seeing it. It was a pediatric clinic. So the doctor comes to the desk and says, starting today, we're going to put that information in the parent chart. And so for every child that checks in, you're going to go to the parent chart to find that information. And then you're going to notify the doctor. And then we're going to put this on the route slip. And the dentist gave about 7 steps. And what I see happen is this is relatively common with operations. There's just like this sudden surge of cause effect where they band-aid it with seven steps or more for something that could have been solved with a different level of efficiency. And when we came right down to it, I said, yeah, so what we could do is on the check-in of that patient, if what the note needs to be to the parent about the parent is that they're difficult or they have, frustrations with x-rays for the child, just a quick code system that's attached to the status update. They can click it on that status update and you'll know that that's just a special sensitive need situation with the mom. And they were like, oh, so we don't have to make 7 clicks to get to that somewhere else. And so what happens in the patient journey right now is many times we're implementing 5 or 6 tools, one for patient comm, one for the doc center, that's, secure mail. And we're looking at all of these things as being kind of these singular solutions that we log into to make sure everybody has what they need. And what the patient journey really should be is all an integrated solution with a singular login or just a couple logins that are syncing information within the PMS and effectively sending out information to the patient in the way they want to receive it, and they're communicating back to us. I had a practice that implemented texting. And after the texting was implemented, the front desk didn't love that people were texting them back about changing their visit. So they created a standard message that would be cut and pasted into the actual text system that said, "Thank you so much for your text. However, we do not respond via text. If you want to communicate with us, call our office." So remember what I just said about the consumer, right? And so now what we've done is we've created these workarounds that don't at all say, "Patients, we love you. We want to talk to you in the way that's best for you." And in fact, we've gone so far in the patient journey to not even think about the way our texts and emails are going out. I don't know about you, but if I receive an email that says, "Our records indicate you're due for a pro fee," if I receive a text that says that, I am not likely to schedule a pro fee. Number one, because I don't know what a pro fee is if I'm a patient. And number two, it's great that your records indicate, but that sounds pretty robotic. And it sounds like I could go just about anywhere to receive that level of care. So, a piece in that patient journey right away as a takeaway I'd like to give to you is change your language. We can't wait to care for you. Are you experiencing bleeding gums? It's been over a year since we've seen you. Click here to go ahead and schedule a visit. We would love to see you before something more happens inside your mouth. Be proactive instead of reactive, and don't use language that sounds like a robot. Also, when the phone is a part of that situation and the patient journey, and we're calling in for a recare visit, or we're calling in to discuss treatment, unfortunately right now what I'm seeing is all of those are dropping into one large funnel. And you and I both know when everything drops into a singular funnel, the outcome is what? Poor. Because I'm not filtering out what is a true revenue generating call and what is not. So everything becomes the tyranny of the urgent, right? Everything is urgent. And that's not true. What's truly urgent in a practice are the things that generate revenue. So I think it's best to go in and evaluate your front desk, take time to really listen and look at this. But I actually set up voicemails for different things categorically that need to be controlled. For instance, you can still have a live person or implement AI, but when someone calls in and they ask about billing, what we do now is we say, "Oh, you know what? I don't know why insurance paid. Hold on 1 minute." Now everything stops, every check-in stops, every checkout stops. And I'm asking around, "Well, do you know why that EOB didn't pay that last 60?" And that's what happens at the front desk. And what I've trained them to do is to say, "Okay, time out." That goes into a mailbox where the voicemail recording says, "This is checked every 24 hours. Please leave your information for us, as well as the insurance that you have in question, and we will investigate and respond to you timely with all of the details." So we have controlled that one element to say, I am no longer going to answer a billing question that cannot be answered in a short amount of time. I have to investigate it. And so when we do that with our patient journey, what it does is it says, I have elevated and valued the revenue generating calls and the revenue generating moments within the clinic, and place the other things in controllable buckets that I check within a checklist, and I don't put them front and center. And then when it comes to the actual patient experience, where they're sitting in the chair and they're about to hear about treatment, my challenge to you would be, are you at the point when they're hearing about treatment that they are adequately informed, that you are quickly giving them their information and out-of-pocket expenditures? Curve is a great tool where I can actually send that treatment plan right to their cell phone. They can sign it. It goes right into the doc center, and there's no printing, there's no fumbling, there's no waiting. And those are the pieces chair side that to me immediately say, efficient, right? If I'm sitting in the chair as a consumer and I'm watching them fumble to even set up the tray, or they're like, "Well, we got to wait for Sally. She just got back from lunch and she'll be in here in a minute to go over this with you." And they're thinking, why does no one else in the practice know how to do this? Or why am I waiting an extra 15 minutes to find out about my insurance benefits? I gave them my card long ago. Again, AI verification of benefits should be done, and that should not be something you're optimizing with your team. In fact, I have practices right now that are like building better optimization for how to check insurance, and then, build the structured cut and paste that goes into the patient profile. I'm like, yeah, so that's AI now. And that should be what you do. Don't optimize that, because all of that time that was spent finding those benefits can now be spent on perfecting how we present the treatment plan and also how we go after collections. Because now I have time to go after the money that's been sitting out there all this time while I've been on hold trying to find out benefits for a patient. So the money piece, and again, in that patient journey for me, that dollar amount at the end is actually like front and center through every part. Where is the money going at every stage of the patient journey? And how are you growing it? How are you making more? And if you're not setting things up for excellence with a small tip, like for instance, are you sending out payments to the patient that they are their amount that they owe and asking them to pay online versus something that gets stuck in snail mail? And are you changing your language to say, great news, we have a way for you to pay your bill online? Or are you sending out a message, you still owe $170, which will never get paid because they're angry that you sent that to them? When I change the language to things like great news, exclamation point, people feel really wowed by the fact that we've given them an easier way to pay online. A lot of what you change in that patient journey becomes tied to leveraging better language, shifting the workload and response. Nobody's hand stamping envelopes or batching them in the system to send out. I'm digitally sending them and receiving that money in. And most systems, even Curve Pay, allows you to actually post that back to the invoice and ledger automatically without someone manually doing that, or manually having to true up those statements. So for me, that workload journey looks like a lot of inefficiency that is solved with some efficient response.
Couldn't agree more. And there's so much we can automate and do different. But I think what you nailed the best, and one of my favorite business stories, is Slack, which we all know as like a work communication tool, grew to $1 billion valuation with one salesperson and marketer, just one total. And they did that because they solved real problems, and they met people where they're at. In our practices today, are we meeting patients where they're at? And, we had well over 100 dentists register to be with us this evening on your own time. And so I have a question that we will send out as a poll right now. During this quarter, you all are choosing to spend the next hour here. What are you looking to solve or innovate or optimize within your practice right now? Because you're choosing to spend time here, and we want to make sure we understand and are tailoring our presentation to help you learn about those areas that you can implement more automation, or offloading non-patient work, or hiring a full-time virtual assistant. We want to know what is most fascinating to you as we kick into this next section here. And while we do that, I just want to talk about some of the inefficiency. Cassie just said, as she said, like, there's so much that happens at the front, and we can stop everything on its train tracks when someone has a question, and we, begin to halt everything that's happening within the practice. And Cassie and I, when we were preparing for this, spent some time talking, and something that we, consistently hear is new patients is the solve. And we're going to talk about how retention is actually the key to growth and the key to optimization here in a second. But I want to show you all, from millions of phone calls and millions of points of patient data, what is slipping by in your practice because of the way you currently operate. 32% of all phone calls are going unanswered, and these are not after hours or during the morning phone calls. These are phone calls during business hours. And Cassie, when we got started, said, well, if you're taking lunch at 12 o'clock every day, is there a patient who could actually come in during their lunch? Well, what we see is when you're getting started and doing your team morning huddle, no one picks up the phones. Well, guess what? People are really likely to call during that. Or if half of your staff is at lunch at 12, guess when people call? When they're at their lunch.
That's right.
56.
And then I was going to say, and then we call to see about them coming in during the middle of the workday, which is when we're not answering our calls.
And then it gives us this data here, like 56% of all hygiene patients are overdue. And $2.4 million is the average amount of unscheduled treatment. And what I like about business is it done in its perfect form, allows a win to be created for the team member, the employees, the owner, and for the customers or the patients. When you're picking up more of your phone calls, you're going to have a more full schedule. When
Right.
you have less unscheduled treatment, you give better clinical care. You have a more optimized schedule. So all of this here is meat that is getting left on the bones because there's such inefficient optimization and automation within our front desk.
Yeah. And I will add to that. I really believe that we are at a place right now where um, the solution to lower production volume is new patients. Like literally every doctor I talk to is like, I just want to produce more, so we need more new patients. And I'm like, yes, I agree. New patients do lead to a lot of volume of spending because they're coming in usually with an acute area that needs to be responded to or cosmetic or whatever. That's great. However, we do need to start when it comes to the money of data. And I just want to give 2 ideas to take away from this of gold nuggets. One, when it comes to patients that haven't been in for recare in over a year, please send an email or something that talks to them about periodontal disease, because it's likely something is beginning in their mouth that they're letting go. What we know today is that, patients more and more are actually foregoing both dental and healthcare because of the fact that they're not focused on that. They're focused on all the other things happening in their life. Bring it into focus. Show them what it is that you do in terms of why it's necessary, especially touching on periodontal disease. And then treatment plans, segment those by types, right? Go ahead and say, you know what, we really want to ramp up our crowns. Let's send a campaign right around crowns and the importance of that, and not letting a tooth go because of the cost of spending more on a root canal, and talk about it. And it's a progression of a disease. And that's really what we want to tell them with caries. So your treatment plans deserve that. They deserve that added language of the urgency to get it done, because it really is what influences them to take care of it now. They think about waiting until it hurts. And what they don't know is it's going to hurt their pocketbook even more. And you have to tell them that. So include that in your language when you're doing treatment plan follow-up. So really, I love that you put the mouse on the wheel here, because this is what I see all day. In fact, I would take it a step further. I actually see where, like, if you imagine a mouse that is in one of those controlled environments in a lab and they put down one of the doors and the mouse reroutes to get to the cheese, that's what we do in dental. There's like a blockage of where we can't move forward. Instead of figuring out why it's blocked, we just move around to another pathway. And many times it's much longer than what it needed to be. And so really, more tech right now, in my opinion, is creating more stress, because we've added so many layers of technology that now it's like, oh, wait, I have to send a secure document. I need to log in here and I'm going to do this. Oh, wait, now I need to talk to the patient via text. So I'm logging into a system over here to send a text, and it's all fragmented. I even see right now where the doctor has decided to go with a new form of imaging, but the imaging doesn't actually sync inside to the PMS. So they log into a third-party tool even to do imaging and screen snips and try to drag it into the patient chart. The tech, I feel like, became so fragmented in the last 3 years that doctors are now at a point of saying, like, I have too many new people to try to train them on these 15 tools. So not only that, your cost within the clinic of what you're actually spending is significantly higher than it needs to be on all of this external technology. So over optimization is where we're living and breathing right now. And before year end, this is a really nice time to cut the fat, to get rid of the things and get lean, because it's doable. And there are enough systems out there like Curve and Reach that have combined these things within technology to make it way more efficient, with a simplified login approach.
What you said earlier, I think your grandma was awesome, first of all, for when you go buy a new t-shirt, you got to get rid of 4.
Yeah,
And
it was brutal.
what we have done in dental is we've just continued to stack.
Yes.
And we need to find out what actually moves the needle. What do patients, not what do we, but what do patients actually want? Because again, if we solve problems, our business is going to grow. And that less, and we hear it all the time, but it's easy to get stuck into the inverse. The belief that less is more is also going to drive better healthcare, and it's going to drive a team that feels like they can focus on what truly matters. And so now that we're re-optimizing from the beginning, based on what we know about the American patient, the consumer, there's an interesting principle of what do we keep, what do we automate, and what do we offload of what we currently do so that we can truly build a different structure. What we don't want you guys to do today is to walk off and say, oh, that was so valuable, but walk away with something where you can actually make changes. Business is about winning an inch, about winning a foot or winning a mile each day, and then beginning to stack those wins. And so what I think is great about this slide is, okay, if we're going to build a different, a more optimized, a more simple front desk and a more simple patient experience, what do we need to keep? What do we need to automate? And what do we need to offload?
Yeah, I actually love this slide, and I love the way that you guys worded this, because this is really what I do when I go into clinics, almost exactly formatted like this. So what I would recommend doing for the first week after you get off this webinar is take each one of these and just do 3 columns: keep, automate, offload, and set them on a piece of paper at the front desk, and just ask your team every time a stressor comes up that they're thinking about, that's like the bane of their existence, or they go home at night and want to just cry in their pillow, to put it on this, put it on the offload. What do you hate doing? And let them get real, right? Like literally let them have their cry session, because what happens in dental is no one's talking about it to the leadership. They're all talking about it to each other, and then they're exiting the clinic. So just go ahead and put these down and let your team just for a week contribute. And then you have one as well as a leader, and you contribute. And then ask everybody to come together. Maybe it's a morning huddle, maybe it's 15 minutes before lunch, and let everybody submit these things to you. You can leverage Chat GPT, you can do it yourself, but take all of the feedback and categorically place it in terms of order of importance based on what was mentioned the most frequently. And what I like to do is take those ideas from the team and let them feel like they are responsible for those changes, because they spoke up, that it was safe to speak up, and that they were part of the solution. What I see right now is new tech is being brought in, and teams are feeling incredibly intimidated because they think it means they're going to lose their job. And I'll give you an example of this with keep, automate, or offload. I did this with a team where they went through all of the things that they wanted to change. And one of the things that was the most difficult and most stressful was insurance verification. Well, there was one member of the team that was hired just for insurance verification. No one wanted to speak up enough on it because they were really scared to lose this team member. They loved her. She had a new baby. They didn't want her to lose her job because she made good money, and they were scared about this. And the doctor came in guns blazing and was like, we're doing it. We'll figure out the rest later. And I said, time out. We got to figure out what you're going to do with that team member so that everybody feels invested in the solution. Or it doesn't matter how good that new insurance verification automates, you're going to lose an entire team and the morale along the way. So we brought that person in and we went through a training to learn what the AI automation would do. And then we took it a step further, and I said, if you could dream up what you would love to do within your job that you don't get to do now, that is really frustrating. Maybe it's something when you're having to answer the phones or when you're talking to the doctor. What would that look like? And she said, you know what? I would love to do more pre-Ds for our dentures. I feel like that they are consistently not accurate. And if we could give patients that information front and center, we would have a way greater case acceptance for even the denture cases that have been, treatment planned already. Like, I'd love to just drill into that. I said, okay, what else? She said, I would love to be, I hear this all the time with quarreling, but I would love to be a part of the fact that once insurance pays and there's a remaining balance, I would love to explain to the patient why there's a remaining balance before we collect that money. Because right now, all we do is we automate and send out a statement, and the patient's griping at us because they owe $60 more, and they don't understand that they went to the ER dentist over the weekend and that's why they owe that. She goes, I would love to do that. I said, guess what? If we implement insurance verification, you get the dream of doing those things to enhance the patient experience. What do you think about that? And she was like, I'm in. Let's turn it on. So now when we promoted it in Morning Huddle and we were able to talk to the team about it, it was literally as though she was promoted in her position for something that was more patient-centric. And I get really emotional about it because preservation of her job elevated the morale of the entire team, Collections start going through the roof. People start producing more because they're caring more about what's happening in the schedule. And really, we've left the dictatorship model. Like that whole dictatorship leadership model is gone. It's gone. And we have moved into a model of servant leadership with what's happening that really is about automating with integrity, automating with care and efficiency, and then offloading responsibilities, just like that girl that wanted to dream big about what she could do for the patient, that now has the time to do it because those things are automated.
You said two really interesting things that I took some notes on here. Often in running my own business and then, talking to thousands of dental practices over the year, there's the belief that AI, when team members think about it, is it's going to take our jobs.
That's right.
Number one, let's kick it back here just for a second to this slide. Staff is more burned out than ever, and we're still missing a ton of opportunities. So let's say we optimize and automate certain things. Well, guess what? There's so much more to go. And what you just did in an incredibly eloquent way is, okay, how do we get people to focus on what matters?
That's right.
Second, have you ever heard of the Pareto principle?
Yes.
One of my favorite things, and I'm a deep believer that we should focus on what matters. And when the staff is putting, what do we keep? What do we automate? What do we offload? Well, my question for them is, what is 20% that you do? What is the things that you do day to day that actually make an impact in terms of better oral health for people and moving this practice forward? If it's not on that 20% of list, how can we offload it and how can we automate it? And what is really cool about this conversation is Curve has amazing technology to simplify the technology stack, so we're not checking as many places. And then what we do at Reach is we help people offload certain things that necessarily don't need to be at the front desk.
Yes.
Often in business, what we talk about is, okay, why is something failing? And there's either people or there's process or systems that are generally leading to it. The front desk is overworked and overwhelmed and broken, not because of the people. There is amazing people there, but because they are tasked with so many things here, and nothing that we're looking at in this below section has any patient interaction.
That's right.
Not in that 20%. And so what Reach and automation can help do is answer those missed calls, send those recare text messages, letting them know that Dr. Pinegar or whoever it might be noticed and cared that they're not you're overdue for your periodontal exam or your SRP, but that the doctor is concerned, helping patients maximize their insurance verification. And the more that you can delegate and divide, the more you can be a focused expert. There are over 20 day-to-day responsibilities that most front desk team members are assigned. And then they're still building relationships and checking in and out the patients who truly matter. And this right here is where you can really get it done.
Yeah. And I would just add one point. Gone are the days when we talked about the change in the consumer as who you are as a consumer. Gone are the days that at the bottom of the invoice, do we say, insurance is an agreement between you and your insurance provider, right? Because it's great to say those things. However, they handed you their insurance card when they walked in. So who do they think is responsible? Because they equate their insurance card, because they pay money for it. It comes out of their paycheck with their credit card. And they've given you both. So they're giving you the responsibility over those things. So regardless of the fact that it truly is tied to them, and it is their responsibility, we have to up our game with customer service so that they understand what is covered and what is not, because there is already such a huge void in the actual knowledge of what happens with insurance now, that all they do is equate it to poor customer service and you're taking more of my money. There's no price transparency. In fact, over the last year, most of the companies that are doing surveys of patients to find out what's really going on, the number one thing, second was wait time, but the number one thing that patients responded was what? Price transparency. I felt like I was being gouged on what I was charged. Well, guess what? When these things are offloaded, now you can focus on the conversation. Now you have adequate information so that it's real time. I have practices I walk into all the time where they're literally quoting off of UCR an estimated percentage versus actually knowing what that pay or fee schedule is. And they're like, well, we'll just collect more later on if it doesn't work out. And I'm like, and you wonder why your patients don't come back? Do you frequently go to the grocery store, buy your groceries, and then get home and Kroger goes, hey, by the way, we know we charged you this, but we haven't updated any of those scans on your food over the last year. So we went ahead and charged your card another $60. I hope that's okay. There's nothing else in the industry like it, right? There's nothing else in the consumer industry that is quite like dental. So when we offload these things, now we can start to match the consumer experience in every other facet of how they operate with their money. And it's necessary because it's what creates longevity. It's what keeps them coming back, and we can't miss it anymore.
And you just nailed like the intro for the next slide, which is efficiency is empathy. When we free up our team members' time, they can actually go have those conversations instead of saying, oh, hey, Cassie, we need you to pay this next $65, because they're just caught into everything that is not automated and that is overstacked in terms of total tech stack.
Yeah.
I think, the world is probably since 2020 going to change more than ever. And I think this phrase is really interesting. Efficiency is empathy. And what I would even go a layer deeper on is I think empathy will become the new differential or the new cutting edge.
I agree.
Can we automate the things just like online booking? But if you have a crown that falls out and you need to get it fixed for your wedding the next day, they're going to want to talk to a human.
Right.
They have questions on the claim that they just got mailed. That's $6,000 and they have no understanding if it's a missed bill or if it's accurate. How do you have a team that's there to connect? And so automation plus people is the future. There's a large company called Klarna, which is like one of your Afterpay, breakout the payments companies. And a year ago, they decided they were going to lay off their whole call center because they developed automation and AI that they believed did it head to toe. And a couple of months ago, their CEO came out and said, we got it wrong. We want to build automation for people that need it when they need it. But when they want to talk to a human, we want to give them instant access. And so efficiency will enable empathy and allow your practice to truly stand out with that human connection people want and expect from their dental practice.
And I would just add to that, I think that where efficiency matters the most to achieve empathy is anything tied to money. We all work hard for it. And when we're spending money, when we're putting money towards something, we better receive efficiency because we worked hard to earn it. And if it's going out the door, it sure better achieve exactly what we hoped it did with what we earned.
There's a really interesting slide next, and you've alluded to it, that we get stuck in the new patient train of growth and new patients fix it all. And the concept of retention is the real ROI, whether it's on employees or whether it's on patient experience. I mean, the flywheel that has been built here truly will move a practice forward, and retention or churn, when there isn't retention, is the silent killer of a business.
I agree with that fully. And I would just say that, I love that engaged teams is front and center because that's a key component. And I always say that engaged teams doesn't mean that they're trained on workflow with pictures of how to set up trays or how to do a CEREC crown. Engaged teams means that they know your financials. They know what year over year looks like. They know where the deficiencies are and where it needs to be. Your associates are trained to not come in and just have an expectation of earning a certain amount without understanding what needs to be achieved in order to get there. And really engaged teams means that they have a financial acumen that allows them to know the goal and where we're headed. It's everybody being on the same bus, headed in the same direction. And if that doesn't happen, really nothing else will stick because the team is moving in different directions and they're not focused on the right end goal. So the outcome of that and a better patient experience is kind of a natural flow when everybody knows what needs to be earned and the schedule needs to be filled, and we need to run efficiently, because if we run behind, we lose that patient and we don't meet goals. Better patient experiences naturally follow. I really believe that that is a byproduct of focusing on the right financials straight from the beginning, and also understanding that achieved loyalty with that patient really pays in dividends, because the referral that follows is what generates growth. And the referral happening from a solid, loyal patient, those are gold. That's the gold standard in marketing. If you can receive that, it's not the Google ad where you cast this wide net and get all varieties of fish into your clinic, when really all you wanted was the bass, right? Like this is saying we've got to make sure that we are achieving the right internal efficiencies so that everybody recommends us naturally once they leave our clinic, because we're just that good. And I always say that, hospitality is a lost art. My origination in operations was in hospitality with large hotels. And I really, truly believe that hospitality within a dental clinic of key things is very important. We've lost the art of saying a patient's name when they check in because we have their picture and their chart and we welcome them. We've lost the way that we answer the phones, to where we're hurried and rushed, and people feel that, and they feel that they're a number. And out of that, we have a stability that begins to grow and flourish, which is how dentistry used to be. And I always say that it's becoming high tech while still remaining high touch. There are elements that are old school standards in dental that should still live on today, while offloading in terms of technology the things that don't need to consume our time anymore. Patients are expecting it. They're getting it in all other areas of the way that they, function day to day. And that's really where the real ROI is, because once that loyalty is established, you become my dentist for life. I'm no longer searching every time I need to get in for the next person. If you think about it, how quickly and how fickle we are as consumers when something doesn't work out to move on to the next thing. We have to give them a reason not to leave. And that's really where we're living today. And so I get excited about the teams that want to do that and how you achieve it. It doesn't cost a lot of money. I use a term called lagniappe, which is a New Orleans word that means a little something extra. And so if your takeaway tonight is just to have a little something extra that you add to that experience, that's a gift to the patient. It doesn't have to be big. It could be a handwritten card. It could be an email that comes to them that has a video where everybody in the team recorded it saying, thanks for being a patient of ours. It can be very small, but the lagniappe is something that catches them off guard. That's a little something extra that makes them feel a loyalty to you that nobody else showed them. And I can't stress that enough as part of the ROI.
Cassie, when we started, we talked about how, employee engagement's probably at one of its lowest ever. And so I think what you talked about, what can we automate and what can we offload and where can we focus? One of my favorite books is a book called Snowball by Warren Buffett. It's autobiography. And a snowball can start very small, but as it goes down the hill, carry momentum. This, starting with engaged teams, is truly the way to gather engagement and retention and grow the practice in a way that doesn't feel like you're pushing a rock up a hill.
That's
but a
right.
rock as it goes down the hill truly moves things forward. And the offloading and automation is truly going to drive that. Folks, I know we don't have a bunch of time left, but there's just a couple other things that we briefly wanted to chat through. As we've talked a lot about, the game is totally different. And since 2001, there's some great data that they have, like the ADA has, or insurance companies have not vastly increased reimbursement rates, but everything costs more and there's more technology, and, Q-tip costs and everything, as you said, Cassie, have become more expensive, tariffs and inflation, but insurance companies don't pay out as more. And so what we're talking about today, when you automate and get your staff focused and where you offload, allows you as a practitioner who owns and operates these businesses to fight the rising costs. The insurance companies are not going to wake up tomorrow and pay out more, even though we would all love it. And so this gap here of rising costs and marginally up or flat reimbursements show we have to play the game different. And what we wanted to close with today is, kind of a 1-week checklist. How do you go home and action some of the things of automating and offloading for your team? And so Cassie, if you want to go through kind of your recommendations on what practices can do to make a real difference and go win a battle at a time.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, identify those 3 non-clinical tasks that could be removed. Involve your team in asking where those deficiencies are. Automate one process at a time. And I always say, just choose one for 30 days and then celebrate the wins. Let your team talk about the wins and huddle so that it all can be part of a team solution. Offload one back office task. What's something that's happening right now in the back office that doesn't need to be there? And then tracking those patient touch points in something that's digital. I see all the time where something's downloaded from the PMS and then uploaded into a spreadsheet and someone's modifying all of this data. There is so much of tracking that can be done now inside of the PMS automatically or inside of Reach with dashboards that gives you those touch points without you having to do manual entry, and really improving the way that the patient interacts based on those KPIs that are shared. And then debriefing with your team. I would say once a week in huddle, there's a sharing of the wins of what you've done, that you share first what we talked about, identifying all of those, issues and areas, and then let people identify the wins together so that everyone feels involved in the solution. It's no longer top down dictatorship authority. It's everybody involved in it together. And that's really where we win.
Everyone, want to thank everyone for coming. We did schedule a little time for Q&A. I already know we're over our 1-hour slot. In closing, kind of 2 recommendations. I loved the most out of today the slide of what are we going to focus on, what are we going to automate, and what are we going to offload.
Me too.
And the reason that we decided to come together is, number one, the game is different. If you want to run a less stressed practice, more profitable practice with a less burned out team, you have to change. And there are 2 amazing companies here, Reach with, allowing you to get cost-effective dental trained virtual assistants, and Curve with a simple tech stack that is integrated all into one. What does this do? What does Reach do? It allows you to offload things you should not have your front focus on. And what does Curve allow you to do? It allows you to automate and to use AI in a way that builds better patient experience, drives a more engaged team, and keeps your team around long-term. So Cassie, thank you for being with us. Anything you want to mention in closing?
No, I'm just grateful for the chance to share this with you. I hope you'll check out both companies because they really can help you to streamline and get efficient, and it's worth it for your teams. I think they're burnt out right now, and I can't think of anything better before year end than to make shifts towards a more effective set of operational goals. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening.